Hi, this episode is sponsored by ActiveArticulations.com and Rosa Fortes and her first solo show, Divine, which will be held in New York City August 27th to the 29th. And you can RSVP. I should put it in the description. I love you guys. Enjoy the video. I hope. Good evening, Hobo Cadets. It's been a long time. So I've decided that I'm going to be making specific videos with specific topics instead of making a series at first. So the first topic is going to be why relationships are important. So why are relationships important? Relationships are important because first I should preface this. So I find that in the modern day, relationships are devalued, and all of them. Status is valued, but relationships are devalued, and I'm not really a collectivist. I don't trust large groups of people, let's say that. And I find that relationships are devalued, that if you look at culture generally, the way our cultures value relationships are generally a grade down in the West nowadays. It's postmodernism, that's what they call it. And I can get into that later. But essentially what? So say a marriage. Marriage is classically, once you get married, that's it. And no, I have not been divorced, and I am single. However, it's sort of that way with everything. It sort of just culminates with romantic relationships, and romantic relationships are sort of the best illustration, and I can explain why as well. So essentially, let's start. So why doesn't it just apply to romantic relationships first off? Well, and like I was saying before, friendship itself is also kind of degraded in modern society, especially like with social media. A friend is sort of just an associate. They supposedly tried to cut down on that, but that's not how that works. So, and you can have lots of these sort of associations with people that don't know you very well and know a superficial version of you from social media very well, that you can make very elaborately, like a celebrity, like these happy celebrities, these happy successful celebrities that kill themselves, right? So what am I talking about? And how'd that come up? Because people that commit suicide, the most common denominator among those people is that they feel isolated. So what am I saying? So relationships are generally downgraded, and it culminates with the romantic relationship, with marriage. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, this doesn't necessarily have to be about a marriage between a man and a woman, but it's simply that is the most, the easiest way to illustrate why relationships are important and how they've been sort of degraded in our sphere, in our Western culture, due to people that are supposedly trying to be experimental and not kind of give credence to convention, basically. But that at its best is science. And once you learn what happens when you do these things, and you find out it's worse or bad or unhealthy, you're supposed to stop. Anyway, so I continue. So what? So all these things have been sort of degraded in status, and instead people care about status more than their relationships, their individual relationships. So why do I call it a romantic relationship? I didn't call it a sexual relationship, yet I still specified between a man and a woman. Right. So let's go on. But I didn't really, I also unspecified. I said that's the most illustrative example, but it doesn't just apply to that. It applies to everything. So we start with, what are relationships for? Well, you don't have to be a romantic. You can just look at science, and biology wants to reproduce. Or you could look at philosophy. Or you could look at philosophy. Philosophy, the highest value is not being a hypocrite. Essentially maintaining your integrity, your values, taking care of yourself, which is another way of saying survival. So, what am I saying? What I'm saying is, without another person, there's really no way of measuring your values against something else, against another you. What would I do if I met myself? So we continue. So why is it a problem that we've devalued these relationships in general? So people will tell you, like, oh, for instance, marriage, it doesn't matter if it's not till death. And there's a degree to which that's true. Like, it's not immoral to get a divorce. I don't think so. At least that's not how I feel. However, why then would they have marriage in the first place? And unfortunately, modern conventional knowledge would tell you that marriage was basically some sort of weird, like, chattel. And there are places and situations and things like that where it was. And there's obviously a dimension in which all relationships, friendships, obviously work relationships, are trades. And people need to get over that, but that's not the point. So what am I saying? So we were talking about integrity. We were talking about maintenance, self-maintenance, and procreation, perhaps, recreation of the self, living in such a way that you don't contradict yourself, to the degree that someone else like you would not be destroyed by your actions. You're not a hypocrite, so that it doesn't kind of come around and bite you. These are the objective kind of goals of living by definition, because without them you don't live. Do you understand? So these are just facts of objectivity. It's not like, oh, history says. It's just like, these are definitions. These are how things are. Okay. So, and we were talking about marriage and how nowadays marriage is more casual. I heard someone say recently, like, oh, people get married nowadays just to get divorced. And it's like, ooh, And it's like, even like polygamies or whatever don't get married just to get divorced in the old world, as far as I know. I suppose in like the really bad places, there are people who get married and they'll kill their spouse or whatever. But I digress. We're talking about why relationships are important, not what psychopaths do. So, and we're talking about procreation, right? And I kind of feel bad. Like, I always feel bad when I'm about to like lay a truth bomb on people, but then I have to, and then once I say it, I have to stick by it. But, okay, so kids. Now, whether or not it's your kid by reproduction, or what have you, or adoption, when can you can't divorce your kid, right? Like, to the degree your parents divorced you in your life, you probably feel a lot of turmoil, you probably feel a lot of pain, correct? So, you can't do that. But you can't necessarily expect to be perfect for that either. So, who can you practice with? You need a mature adult that's down with the same thing. And it's not real if it's not real. If it's not forever, it's not forever. Don't get me wrong, I also understand the concept of like, oh, we've raised the kids and there's no, there's no passion left, or there's just no love left, which is much worse. And they've already raised their kids, so it's like, that's that. I get it. But I ask again, like, can you divorce your kids? You really can't. You're not supposed to. Like, that's not raising kids, is what I'm saying. And I'm not saying you should baby children forever, or helicopter mom, helicopter parent, whatever they want to call it. I'm saying that commitment, that romantic commitment. Why do they use the term romantic? So romantic is a reference to Rome, and really it's a reference, the way we use it today, it's a reference to French literature about knights. They had some of the first literature about knights and chevaliers, that's what they were called in French. That's where the word chivalry comes from. But essentially, so these were the values. You understand? These are the values that we use for love today, generally. Most people that poo-poo kind of lifelong monogamy would do so because they don't stay that romantic forever, right? So we continue. What am I saying? But that romance doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. And people have a problem with that nowadays because we kind of have a big consumer culture. And I'm very capitalist, so that might sound hypocritical coming from me. But it's not, because literally I don't believe in classes. So making a class culture to me is just absurd. And it's a problem. But why did I even say, a consumer culture? Because people expect to be given romance. Do you understand? Like when people, and I'm guilty of this as well in my past, when people say have had trouble with relationships, they'll act like they don't know what they want because they expect the universe to give it to them. Because that's what happens sort of in movies, and that's where we get our modern romanticism from. Okay, and we're on a tangent, but enjoy. So we get our modern romanticism from these movies. Movies like The Princess Bride, Disney movies, old Disney movies, not the newer ones really. And that's kind of what reproduced that French culture for us. A lot of the movies are actually reproductions of French literature, actually, like Beauty and the Beast. So I believe that's French literature. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me, tear me a new asshole. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the reason why you go to those things isn't because the reward is fully outside yourself. There are rewards that manifest outside yourself from those things, and they're often invisible to the person because they're a product of discipline. And that's just lost on the modern generation, you see. So this relationship, all relationships are a product of discipline. and the discipline rewards you with satisfaction and contentment, but it takes effort. And it's like we've become so like expectant that that's sort of what will make us happy in that way, that romanticism exists outside of ourselves, essentially, that our values exist outside of ourselves. And so when people lose their passion, they kind of feel betrayed by the universe, because stories don't really continue in movie universe, in Hollywood. Stories don't continue past the interesting parts. But can you do that with your children? We don't have to be fully sentimental, and we don't have to be so conservative that we're just like, oh, men and women, this and that. I'm saying men and women are different physically, okay, and always will be. And you can even be a gender neutral believer, and those people will be different if they are opposite genders, and that's probably why they chose to be called those things, if that's really all you think genders are. But that's not the point. My point is, do you expect your kid to be exactly like you? Especially if you're someone who believes in adopting exactly like you, but your kid's not going to be exactly like you. To the degree that they're different, you're going to have to be tolerant. You're going to have to be extremely tolerant. And your kid isn't going to be mature enough that your mistakes are going to be understood. They might be suppressed for a long time and forgotten for a little while and come back later. And I understand that that's not really 100% your problem. But if you don't want to be a hypocrite, and you probably have authority figures that weren't completely perfect, you probably don't want to reproduce that, correct? So again, it's best to treat your relationships with the utmost respect, at least the respect that they deserve, and don't pretend that something isn't what it's not. So I'm not saying that you should, every relationship you be in should be like even a committed relationship. Hey, define your own relationships. I'm just talking about the sanctity of relationships itself. And I took the two most physically different characters I could find, and I took the most kind of statistically hard thing for a human being to do for a long period of time: successfully raise offspring. And why do I say that? Because the average person feels botched. If I understand correctly, the average person feels at least fairly botched. I've never met a person that was like, I have perfect parents. I've met people with amazing parents of different sorts. And the people, in fact, the one person that I know that was like, yeah, my dad is perfect, is amazing, was adopted. So, I'm happy for him. But I think he was adopted at like 14. So I don't think that's the guy who pissed him off, if someone pissed him off. And I digress. So all of these casual things that we do to nowadays to our friends, sometimes to family members, and I understand narcissistic abuse, and I'm not saying not to cut someone off if it's necessary, and if they're trying to destroy you, they will not rest until you are destroyed or sabotaged, and there's snakes. I understand, like, the people you can't negotiate with, you don't negotiate with. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you see, exactly, if there is no space for that sanctity, if there isn't some space at the top for, oh, this person knows me inside and out, thank God they are a mature adult as well, and we share everything together, and we're in it together for life. If we don't have space for that, and we make space for that through discipline, growing up is what they used to call it, okay? I'm sorry, but if we don't create that mechanism, that cycle in ourselves, that habit, then how can we be surprised when we are terrible parents? And I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like our system sort of spoils us. And the average person, if they were stuck with a kid, would take care of a kid. And the system sort of gives us a whole bunch of options not to do that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have a safety net, because I believe in charity, and children are the most vulnerable people, generally. But you don't want to not disappoint. You don't want to let down the most vulnerable people. And there's a degree to which everyone is a child within, correct? And that's why you have to practice. You have to learn. You have to work out. You have to stay vigilant, stay aware, stay lucid. You have to take care of yourself, because there's a degree to which you're constantly your brain is trying to become soft and flat, like a worm at the bottom of the sea, like a slug. What am I trying to say? So, what I'm trying to say is, first off, you're missing out. Like, even the best friendships are these long friendships where you love that person, and they know some of your worst parts, some of the worst parts of you, but if they didn't, do they really care about you? Are they really your friends? Or were they using you and you using them, or not even using them, trying to be something for them? Or maybe you were using them, but it's some mechanism. It's not really like, oh, these two people are there for each other. They know that because they know one another. I'm sorry, I keep burping. I keep letting out little burps. Perfect. Have more coffee. Need more coffee. So, and a lot of it comes with relativism. And one of the tenets of relativism, one of the things that people believe nowadays because of postmodernism, which is essentially them having given up on science, and I'll explain why in a moment. They believe there is no objective truth. They've taken quantum physics, where how something vibrates is kind of decided by the observer, especially on smaller than an atomic level, quantum level. They've taken that and they've expanded that into literally like history isn't real and you can say whatever you want and just lie about science. Even if there's evidence against it, you can just say there isn't and you'll change reality. And they know this isn't true, but they're manipulating people into essentially being the scapegoat for things. Let's say that. I don't know if I'm the only person here. I don't really care because it's quiet. So what am I saying? So even if the child isn't yours, you don't want to let them down. Even if it's not a child and it's just a naive person who isn't as disciplined as you or doesn't know something you don't know or relies on you maybe they're more impressive than you and you want to be there for them because they work so hard, and maybe you owe them, or you want attention. People are like that. And it all comes into that, like relationships have been devalued, and it is a problem of survival. And I'm an individualist. I believe that you should rely on others as little as humanly possible. And first off, I know that the only way to make a living, especially in the modern day, is through voluntary cooperation. So there's that, right? But I believe you should negotiate yourself. Exactly. And these people are so collectivist, unfortunately, that they believe in interchangeability. And again, so can you just trade out your kid? Can you do that? Would that feel right? Would that have felt right if, as a child? Like, don't get me wrong, it's terrible if you went through CPS and someone took you away from your parents. Maybe they did something wrong, maybe they didn't, and maybe they were just accused and they couldn't fight back. But it's the foster system is generally not really bad. Let's say the foster system is generally really bad. So yeah, that alone is not probably. It hurts. I've listened to people who've gone through much less, and it hurts. Things happening in their home when they're young. And they don't know it hurts until later. In context. Weird. But if somebody traded you, one of your parents, that would be damaging to the psyche in ways that we don't understand. And you don't have to just be like, oh, Freud, blah, blah, blah. You could just look at developmental psychology. It's not Freud. A lot of women are involved, in fact. And, things that happen in certain parts of your life. Like, it's been a long time since I had my college psychology class. I won't lie. It's been about a decade. However, there is a degree of nurture that goes in. Nature is a sequence of events, and you are a part of a grand scheme, a food chain, and a sequence of reality. You're a part of a chain, and if you do not, even if you don't, want to live the most conventional lifestyle, or that's just not your way, I'm not the most conventional man in the world, okay? I believe we are all sinners, and that just means we all make mistakes. Or we all fail. Or we're just all not perfect. And I don't care. My point is that it's still sacred, damn it. It's still sacred. All of this added abstraction, all of this, and they can do it too, that doesn't desacred anything. The fact you could leave was the point in the commitment. I got a thing in my eye. The fact you could leave is what makes it sacred. You were never trapped. None of these people throughout history are trapped. I'm sorry. They were trapped to the degree that anyone's trapped. But that's not the romanticism. That's not the thing that, you see, that's the thing. You could say, okay, to the degree that there were people that were trapped, there were people that were trapped. There's people who are still trapped. You can see them on TV. It's terrible. And I feel terrible for them. And part of me wants to go over there like a marauder and save them like the idiot American that I am. However, no, first off, because I don't have what's necessary. But you're allowing this diversity so these people can follow their values, because their values are the most important thing, and because they should have that integrity so that the next generation can have that integrity, right? It's not, oh, one set of values is right and the other set of values is oppressive. That's not the point. The point is that everyone should be allowed to be their most ideal self in their own eyes, so long as they're not hurting anyone. And we're at 30 minutes. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.